Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I'm Vadim Perlovsky, and today we're excited to welcome one of the brands that actually we discovered, I want to say 3, 4 years ago. It's the first legal distillery since, uh, what's the, it's a new distillery in what, nearly 200 years in the Isle of Skye?
Talisker.
There we go. That's the other one. The other one doesn't matter. This is the one we're talking about. We're here with Torabhaig. All right. I got the honor of visiting Torabhaig in 2022 with Bruce, who showed me around. But now Jake Hukee is you're the national brand ambassador, right?
I'm just the brand ambassador.
He's the brand ambassador. Even
Yeah,
better.
we'll get national at some point.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
our U.S. brand ambassador, Jake Hukee, is here to join us. He is a friend back from his previous ambassador days, and now he's with Torvig, so we're excited to have him. Thank you so much for making the time for us, spending the evening with us. I know you're a little bit ahead of us. You're 3 hours, 2 hours ahead. Chicago's 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
two.
But yeah, we're here to talk about Torvig. They make a heavily peated scotch that doesn't taste heavily peated, in my opinion. But I will let Jake talk all about it. Last time we tasted Torabhaig, they only had two expressions, and we got super peat nerdy about it, chemicals and all that. Let's see where Jake and his style takes it today. So we're excited with four expressions from Torabhaig in front of us, and two other expressions from the parent company, which Jake will mention as we go. But yeah, Jake, take it away.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. First of all, it's been a minute since I've done a tasting with you online back in the old Star Wars days. Which I appreciate. I think there's probably some people on that tasting that are here tonight too. We did some a few years ago during the COVID times when we were all doing virtual tastings only. So appreciate the support on that, and thanks for following me over here to Torvig. I had a short little layover at McAllen for about 7, 8 months, and between Star Wars and Torvig, but I met Bruce, the one of the founders of Torvig, a little over a year ago, and we were on a podcast together. And he's kind of like, essentially after the fact, like once you're bored with that McAllen stuff, look me up. And so I did. And one of my good friends is our U.S. sales director, and they had an open brand ambassador position for Torvig and one of our other whiskeys on the Mauritia portfolio. So started with them back in March now, and had the pleasure of going to Isle of Skye and staying at the distillery for a few days back in late July, early August. So it's been quite a awesome trip so far with the brand, literally and figuratively. If you hear, I always go vicariously through the roars of Wrigley Field just up the street for me to see how the Cubs are doing this evening, as we can stay alive in the playoffs. But no, happy to be here. Torvegs. I was a fan of the brand ever since the first release. There's a liquor store called Gold Eagle in the suburbs of Chicago, which does amazing single barrel picks, Scotch lovers, spirits lovers overall. And they turned me on to the first chapter of Torabhaig when it came out, and I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive, and drank it rather quickly. Next time I was back up there for work, I got another bottle, drank that relatively slower, but still kind of quickly because it was so enjoyable. Not understanding that it was a finite whiskey that wouldn't be around. And it was just the first release of many chapters to come from this distillery. And then, like I said, had the fortunate reality of meeting one of the founders a couple of years later, and here we are tonight discussing it. So, yeah, let's go with order. Probably Alt Glan batch strength. Then Croc Nemoina, which looks like Knock Nemoina, but it's Croc. And then Sound of Slate. And we will then go to let's do the Mossburn, and we'll end with the Cashel Camish. So I only work for Torabhaig. Mossburn is the parent company of Torabhaig. They are an independent bottler. They're a distillery. They are says distillers in the company name, but they don't distill. They just are craft or get whiskey from all over, that mostly just to Scotland, and collect it and release independent releases all across the world for that. So, but yeah, they founded Torvag about 10 years ago, and kind of been going on from here. So cool. Everyone's got the tasting order. Please, if you haven't already, let's go ahead and just jump into the All Glan, and start tasting that, because why listen to me ramble when you could also just drink whiskey too, which is enjoyable. And if you have any questions or anything want to interrupt, please just go on mute and ask away. I do have, I can show some pictures and things like that as well. I know it's more fun to see the distillery. How many people have been there by show? Nice. Usually it's like people are like, where is Isle of Skye? So nice to see some people familiar with the landscape. But yeah, essentially what Torabhaig was trying to accomplish, I feel like I, I read this quote a few years ago from Rick Rubin, the music producer, and he was talking about how art is a portal of the unseen world. And I think whiskey is just that. I feel whiskey has always been an art since my grandpa was an engineer at Jim Beam. Took pride in like having a grandfather worked for this great American company that's always out there, very recognizable. And I started working in beer and whiskey a little over a dozen years ago or so, and kind of brought that along with me. And as I got more into the weeds of it all and distilling process, you definitely see in the blending process as well that whiskey is truly an art. And without the grains, without a farmer, without a distiller, whatever it may be, taking all of these elements that end up in your bottle at the end of the day or in your glass like we have here tonight, um, you wouldn't have anything. It's something that is completely created by different people and different methods of art of different artisans essentially, kind of combining everything into that collective glass at the very end of the day. So for me, when I saw that quote from Rick Rubin, I always think about these distilleries that didn't exist. Torabhaig being one of them. Talisker being the only distillery on the Isle of Skye is in the last 200 years. You think, well, why is that? Why wasn't there another distillery there? Why didn't anybody else try? And for the people who have been there, you see it's very mountainous, very rugged. There's peat bogs all over the place. There is just hills of mud, hills of dirt, trails all around to go hiking. But you would definitely realize by looking at the landscape, it's not a great place to grow agriculture. Not really anywhere you could harvest anything. But you have all this rugged, rough terrain, yet it's exceptionally beautiful too. You can see the water and the landscapes, the greenery, when it all comes through, when sunshine does decide to come through those clouds, coming through that gray, it's one of the most magical places in the world, certainly what I've ever visited across the world. And what we wanted to do at Torabhaig was take that ruggedness, the peat, that idea of the landscape, but also that complete beauty that is in the background of everything that's in the on that island, and put that into a whiskey bottle. And the reason why no one else was tried is because just can't really grow there. It's not necessarily, it wasn't a high tourism place. People didn't really visit it until the 1990s when there was a bridge built from the mainland over to Skye. And what they've gone from having, maybe 10, 20,000 tourists a year, they have now jumped up over to 1 million tourists coming through the Isle of Skye. So what better time than start a distillery over the last decade or so when you have people starting to come there, starting to see what this island is all about, and then having this distillery try to encapsulate that island inside of a whiskey bottle. So the idea of Torabhaig was to take mass amounts of peat, drive it through every element when it comes to mashing, fermenting, and distilling to take that peat, traditional flavors of peat. We can get into the ppms and everything and all that nerdiness if you want to this evening, and basically have it go through so much copper contact that more of those medicinal, rugged, smoky notes then gently turn it over to more floral, fruity notes at the end of the day inside of your whiskey glass. So with Alt Glan, what you have in your glass right now is chapter 2 of what we call our legacy series, where we are building up to our 10-year-old age statement whiskey, our 12-year-old age statement whiskey, we're kind of ahead of schedule, which we can get to when we get further down the line of the legacy series chapters. But what we wanted to do is essentially start or have each person, whoever drinks Torabhaig, kind of come along the journey with us. I kind of compare it to like an expansion league team in American sports where the hype starts getting built about, hey, this town's going to have its first pro team or it's going to have another pro team, and you can get season tickets early on for a cheaper price. You start buying the t-shirts, buying the jerseys before anybody else does. And whenever that first season it comes for that team, like you're there, you're in the stands, and you can go along with it and have pride in that hometown team. With Torabeg, it offers the opportunity because we are literally showing you what we are showcasing as a young distillery as we graduate to our 10-year-old age statement, which we hope to release in 2028. So Alt Galan was the second chapter. What the distillery did back in 2017 when they first started distilling after about 3 to 4 years of rebuilding this old farmstead on the Isle of Skye, where it is now our distillery. What they wanted to do was kind of take a lot of this peat, take a lot of what was around them, and distill it through whatever techniques it took to basically make what they had the idea in their mind. Neil McLeod Matheson is the true founder of it. It was his idea, his vision of the distillery. Bruce Perry, who Vadim and I have been talking about here a little bit, is one of the co-founders. He's our head of global advocacy as well. He's been working with Neil at Mossburn, I think, since 1997. So they've known each other just for a ton amount of time. But they decided to start this distillery a little over a decade ago. Once they had funding, Neil had the idea in place because his family comes from that area of the country, and they thought, let's go build a distillery here. So through about 2,500 runs of or runs this or runs of the stills that came out to be about 2,500 barrels, they had what was the groundwork for Torabhaig. After about I think about 6 to 8 weeks of distilling, kind of figuring out, how many ppms they're going to go into the grain before distillation, how long they're going to mash, how long they're going to ferment, where they're going to make their cuts, and doing all this stuff over that 6 to 8 weeks to figure out what would be the first barrels of Torabhaig. And through chapters 1 through 3, they took that idea from those first 2,500 barrels and started making whiskey. So chapter 1 was about 55 ppms in the grain. And then after distillation, it was, I believe, around 17 ppms. And with All Glan, entered around 78, and then came out around about the same as well inside the glass, as it did with chapter 1. But ppms, like anything around 50, 55 is considered a high peated whiskey. What they wanted to do is really showcase all of that rugged peatiness inside of the island and put it into a bottle, but then not have it taste like other whiskeys you had, traditional Isle of Skye whiskeys, or sorry, Isle of whiskeys that you might be more familiar with when it comes to peat. They thought, why not make their own version of peated whiskey? So the idea was always to tame the peat through distillation and have it more tempered, if you will, to get that catch more of those floral, fruity notes to it. So All Glan was chapter 2. All Glan itself is a little stream. I would say it's probably comparable to a creek or a crick, depending where you're from in the US. But they actually closed or locked off that stream, blocked it off to actually become our water source. So the Oglan is one of our two water sources we have at Torabhaig. Torabhaig itself means the hill above the bay. I'm trying to see if I can get a picture here for everybody to see the actual distillery, so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about here. Have we tasted yet? Anybody?
Yeah, I think we're tasting along as you're talking. You said the peat is locally sourced, so you guys ship the peat over to where do you get your barley from?
No, everything comes over from the mainland, for barley and peat we're getting, yeah, locally. Barley is coming from the mainland though.
So you're getting unpeated barley, or you're sending peat back to the mainland?
Sending it back.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. You guys see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. So, as you can tell, pretty cool place. Pretty epic when it comes to beauty and scenery. The white building is where our mashers are, and then fermenters, and then the long brick building toward next door to it. That's where all of our stills are too. I guess our mash, there are fermenters too. Yeah, partly in each of it. But this cooling pool is right where we actually cool down our water after it comes out. But right above it, where the photo is basically taken from, is the Oglan, which is the water source where we get our water. And that comes down into the distillery, and we start making our whiskey there. So, whenever we talk about we have titles to our whiskey or anything like that, it's something local to it as well. So, like the Sound of Slate, which will be the third one we try, fourth one we try. That's actually the body of water back there is actually the Sound of Slate. Slate meaning smooth, which is I've been told that the area which our distillery in is the smoothest part of Skye. When you drive around, you're like, yeah, I can kind of believe that compared to the rest of the country, that or island that has more mountainous terrain to it. So, yeah. But yeah, what are the first thoughts on Oglan?
It feels very smooth, some smoke, some salt. I personally have not had the chance to try Talisker yet, but I'm a big fan of the first one that we just tried, and I cannot imagine how it can get better, but I'm assuming it is going to continue to get better. So,
We'll definitely try. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's definitely kind of what the elements that they're going for and capturing that profile was kind of everything described right in there. It's spot on to kind of what Torabhaig was searching for when it came to making whiskey with a heavy amount of peat, but also, not relying on the peat to be the showcase of it all. It's something that's a part of the whiskey making, but it doesn't have to overwhelm everything that's inside of your glass at the same time.
I was gonna say that knowing that this is around 70 ppm on the barley pre-distillation is insane, right?
Yeah,
Because some of the biggest peat bombs you think of in the industry are like 45, 50, the
sure.
LaForts and the Ardbegs of the world. And I this is what really made this distillery become one of my favorites is because for a long time, and a lot of the members here know I was not a peat guy. Still am
Mm.
on the fence, right? It's we're getting to that Stockholm syndrome where, I'm starting to love it, but for the most part, not a big peat guy. And I remember I was explaining this to someone, and I was like, "Yeah, Torabhaig, lightly peated." And Bruce nearly ripped my head off. He goes, "No, we're heavily peated. We choose to not be a peat bomb. It's a choice, not because we're lightly peated. We're heavily." I was like, "Okay, all right." And so that's something I learned. And yeah, the nose on this was definitely peaty, but the palate is so well rounded, so balanced. Like there is, of course, there is peat in the liquid, but
Mm.
it's not a peat bomb. It's well balanced and well done.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about peat bombs. Like, the ppms might be lower than what we're doing before distillation. And the reason why I have this picture up of our stills is because right in the middle there, you can see inside of all the copper inrods inside of the still, where in our condensers, there's about 75 or so copper inrods on each one of those stills. And the whole part of the reason we have that is because we're trying to get more copper contact, bringing down more of the phenols and the cressels when it comes to the actual peat, elements of the peat that are inside of the grain, and making that be stripped away, taking away the weight of the peat and making it less heavy inside of the glass at the end of the day and trying to get more of like this yellow fruit kind of spicy note to it, and fruitier floral elements, as I keep saying about it, because it's something that's we're really trying to go for, even though like, by technicality of what's going into your into the grain and then into mashing, fermenting, and distilling would be considered a peat bomb, but it's all about how you actually make your whiskey at the end of the day that will make it enjoyable to some or overwhelming for others. But yeah,
Well,
so good.
I'll say it might not be a peat bomb, but for me it's somewhere between a peat M80 and a peat grenade.
I like that. Might have to use that for a shirt or something. Yeah, it is interesting because like the first time I had chapter one, you taste the peat, but the way it like dances off your mouth was something unique to it all. When at the time, my distillery I was working for, we were doing a Lagavulin collaboration by using their barrels as a finish with our single malt whiskey from Australia, and we were picking up so much of those traditional Lagavulin notes, like almost like cigar ashiness, the chocolatiness to it as well, and like combining with our whiskey, it's aged a lot in or was aged in wine barrels, and kind of making these really interesting notes to it. And I remember drinking Torabhaig, this young distillery. The maybe those barrels were like 4 years old, 5 years old at most, some of them, and it has this just almost like romantic aura that's going on inside of your mouth because it's doing so many different things, and you feel the peat, but at the same time the barley is shining through as well when it comes to what it does as a distillery. So happy and enjoyable that I can work from now. But this is, yeah, kind of the pictures of our distillery. In the scientific sense, we're doing mashing for around 8 to 9 hours, and then fermenting around 80 hours. And then our distillation, we have a 10,000 liter wash still and 8,000 liter spirit still, where we're doing that, running off of there and producing. I think we have around about 30 to 35,000 barrels. We only hold, let's see if I can find a picture of it, and I'll get into the what all this stuff is in a second. But we only hold about 1,000 or so barrels at our dunnage. Kind of. So now we have a picture of it somewhere around
And
here.
your still is relatively tiny compared to other stills in Scotland, right? Like your still is not very big.
Yeah, that's not by choice. That is based on this right here. Let's just get into that's a perfect lead into what is going on at our distillery. So this was an old farmstead that was started in the 1700s as basically a cattle ranch, and having milk being produced here from various cows. And this is what it looked like in 2014, a year or so after we bought the property. And it was run down. It was ragged, much like the terrain over in Skye, but it was also a landmark, and it couldn't be touched. The owner of this place, he actually had visions of turning it into a distillery himself. So what he wanted to do is kind of was already starting to clean it out or map out an area of how a distillery could fit in here. He got sick, unfortunately, and passed away. Neil bought the place and kind of took over the vision of what this former gentleman had that owned it and turned it into what we see now. It took 3 or 4 years to do the masonry work on this guy to have it completely transformed in there. And as I mentioned, it's a national landmark, so they couldn't do anything when it came to moving a window frame, moving a door frame, the height of the ceiling. All they could basically do is update and upgrade everything. So the reason why our stills are that size is because they fit just into there. Like you can see how tight it is in our whole operation. They were actually going to have an eighth mash tank, sorry, fermenter, but they couldn't fit it in there, so they had to actually go sell it back to the company they purchased it from because there was no room in there. Had to remove literally the roof of the farmstead and then drop everything into the room that would become our distillery essentially. So you can see through this picture here on my left that it is going up to the brim of everything, and everything impossible is being fit in there as long along through the lines too. So it's a pretty impressive space once you see it and think like this was just a rundown farmhouse that has now been transformed into this beautiful distillery. And it took about 3 years to do it all. Here's some more pictures of our current stills that we have sitting in there. And they basically they're wearing these things out. I mean, they're pumping out a ton of liquid, but they're also running them out because of how long they're doing their runs for. Also with the amount of peat that's in the barley, and so it adds to a little bit more strenuous take on the stills. That copper is being stripped away so much more because all that sulfur is being taken away from the actual liquid itself too. Which so they have about a 25-year predicted lifespan for these stills, and then I guess they're gonna have pretty much the same thing to have Foresight build another one for them and drop them in there in about let's call it 16, 17 years from now. So yeah, it's interesting to see how it's all transformed into the beautiful place that it is into what it once what it once was, and it kind of became as a farmstead to a division of a distillery to two guys actually transforming this place into a distillery. So I was told the initial budget went a little higher than they expected to go with it all. They were like, "Oh, we have this much in capital," and then like, "We might need to double that just to try to get everything done in here and try to have it get going and turn it into the distillery that it is today." But yeah, and then here's obviously the picture. So if you would go back to this this courtyard or is now where our cafe is. And then we have a restaurant and bottle shop and everything in there where you can purchase stuff. But yeah, there wasn't much going on there. But the really beautiful thing about what the distillery did when they first opened is that they put an ad out in the newspaper, local newspaper, to hire people to teach them how to be distillers. They didn't want anybody that had an idea of what they were doing, create the crazy idea that they were doing to lead on and bring that attitude into the distiller, being like, you can't just take all this peat, run it through your stills and expect to have more of this floral fruity note to it. It seems really ambitious and crazy, and not just a bit crazy, but actually crazy. So they hired people that had no distillation background whatsoever. And these are the group of folks that they hired locally to make their team of about 9 distillers. And one of them was a longshoreman, one of them was an engineer, one of them was an artist, one of them was a musician, having all these different backgrounds. One was a beekeeper. And what this team has now done, almost a decade later, is that they still take care and maintain all the elements of the distillery themselves. So, when you're running the still and you have some time on your hands, they'll be out there cutting the lawn and mowing and trimming the hedges and everything like that, laying down flowers, taking care of visitors and maintaining this beautiful place that we currently have right here. So as they are people that built up this distillery over the last 9, 10 years or so, they're also the people that maintain it too, which is really cool to see. And I think there's of the original 9 distillers, 8 of them still work for the company, or 7 of them still work for the company. One person unfortunately passed away, but yeah, other than that, they're still there and still kind of maintaining the place and transforming Torabhaig into the distillery that it dreams to be. So, with each legacy series, with each chapter, as we call them, we send off every other chapter with a batch strength release. So, all gone batch strength. Pretty understandable what that is. Essentially, what we did, we didn't cut it at all. We usually enter the barrel around 62, 63% of alcohol, and this one kind of, or yeah, yeah, and then it comes at a batch strength. So, with this guy, so no adding of water to it whatsoever, and bringing up the ppms in the glass are around 22 for this guy versus being around 17 with the non-batch strength. So every other one we will, if Fasana Slate, we're actually getting a batch strength of. It just landed in the US, I think last week or early this week. So that'll be out in the market probably within the next couple weeks or so. So basically, what I love about our batch strength releases is that it's kind of interesting what happens to the peat. But it also makes sense when you think about what's happening with the barrel tannins at full strength alcohol and how the peat plays with the tannins and the structure of the barrels itself. But please go ahead and have a taste if you haven't already and see the difference between all gone and all gone batch strength. I assume you get some Dodgers fans here too. No?
We like that distillery too.
I was just wondering since they're just, advanced
I'm
and could
sure
be coming to
Jordan.
Chicago to play some games.
All right. I'm sure Jordan has an opinion.
Are you guys all California based?
No, actually, we're all over. We're
Oh,
not.
okay, cool. I thought maybe you were just all in California.
No, no, no. Jason's up in Minnesota. I think it snowed
Nice.
there today. The assumption is it snows there every day.
Actually, it thunders. We had a huge thunder. We had a thunderstorm and lightning,
Really?
which is crazy for October. It's
Did you?
crazy.
Yeah, that is. I have a bunch of family from Minnesota, so I'm up there. I used to be up there a lot as a kid.
I think we've got three Minnesota folks here.
Nice.
I think Adam might be Minnesota as well.
All
Oh,
right.
great.
Awesome.
I'm in Chicago.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Maybe we're neighbors. Who
There you
knows?
go.
Yeah, I found out one of my neighbors lives in the third floor of my building. She now works at one of my best accounts. And I'm like, I really hate the clash of my personal life and business life just to now merging together. And it never fails when I go in there. She's always in there too. Very nice person, but just like strange. Like, I see you now in my daily life and also in my daily life out in business. So, but yeah, great account. If you ever guys get to Chicago, Slightly Toasted, one of the best whiskey bars in the country, in my opinion.
Oh, I'll have to save that. That's not one I've heard of before.
Yeah, they don't ever make the list because they aren't open on weekends because they're in more of a business district of Chicago.
Uh,
So they kind of get snubbed from like the top whiskey list or whiskey places to visit. But I would say they probably have the best selection of American whiskey in Chicago.
wow.
Yeah,
They're definitely on my list when work sends me there soon. So,
nice. What part of town do you working at them?
I'm up in Minnesota, but I travel
Oh,
for work. So I'll be down
gotcha.
there working at a hospital. But I'm previously from Racine, Kenosha area. So I actually
Yeah,
my bottle of the first one that we tried here was from Golden Eagle as well. So,
definitely.
big
Yeah,
fan
Jake
of
and
Golden
Brett's the
Eagle.
best. Yeah, they're the best, man. That's I think that's like one of the best liquor stores in the entire country. With the amount of barrel picks they do and the variety of distilleries they're getting from all over, it's quite awesome. Awesome. So, as we are trying all Glen batch strengths, are any thoughts? Any see any differences between the two whiskeys?
The nose is less peaty on this one, or maybe it's because I'm already neck deep in peat.
No, I think that's a great observation. There's something about the peat that gets a little toned down in these batch strength releases.
And on
Yeah,
the nose, go
the
ahead.
nose for me was a whole lot sweeter, and initial palate was nice and fruity, and then the peat came in a little bit later in the palate. Um, I I like this batch strength. I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. It's really interesting how um the peat gets a little bit simmered through the higher ABV, which is fun to see. Everybody kind of thinks that it would be more extreme in peat, but it's actually quite the opposite when they're kind of counteracting with one another.
It's so interesting. It definitely doesn't drink like it's over 60%. I would not
No.
guess that. And the peat is really prevalent. It's really present on the finish, on the like now that I'm talking, the phenols are coming in. But beyond that, it was just nice and smooth all the way through. As much as everybody hates that word, it was easy to drink with just a little bit of spice from the alcohol, but
Yeah.
it does not taste like you would expect a 61 percenter to be hot. It does not
Yep.
really as hot as as I expected it to be.
I love the note about barbecue. I get that so much on it. It's actually quite tasty with some barbecue chicken to pair with.
Ooh. I will say the first one was sweeter to me than this one. This one feels more balanced, and so having read
Mm,
that blog article from Bruce about why you're releasing the slate or sleet at,
slate.
slate at cast strength, he's like, why not? It's good that way. Essentially,
Yeah, I concur. I had a barrel of it. Well, I tried a barrel sample of it. I didn't drink a whole barrel while I was over there, and obviously it won't be the final blending of barrels, but it was fantastic in that single barrel itself.
for sure.
Yeah. Did you guys try any of the reserve casts while you were over there? Who visited the distillery?
This
No.
was 2022. I think it might have been just like the first one that the distillers had picked that I got to try as part of the tour, but there wasn't
Yeah,
a purchase.
we just started doing single barrel programs, I think last year. So I think we have four coming out in November. Chicago, LA, Massachusetts, two Massachusetts. So kind of a little bit all over the place.
Wow, big
But
state of Massachusetts gets two, huh?
they sold two. I mean, I'm working on selling 3-to-1 account right now. We that the unsaid buyer was should have been in at Torabhaig right now picking the barrels, but cha plans changed. So unfortunately, as it can many times a lot in this industry. So
Who's the
yeah.
account bringing in LA so we can keep an eye out for it?
Let me double check. I think it's
KNL would make
K&L.
would be the one that would make the most sense.
I'm like 89% sure it's K&L, so that
Okay.
I can double check.
All right. If you give us a heads up, we'll keep an eye out and make sure to snag it when it hits the shelves.
Yeah, I think they bought a port barrel as well. Looking at this one, yeah, so
Ooh,
those are like 315 bottles.
a
So there's a
four
lot. There should
barrel
be a lot of.
Torvik sounds amazing.
Yeah, I was drinking one last. Oh, this is Madeira actually, but I was drinking a port somewhere around here. I have one, and it's
Do
quite
I need to
tasty. I
send
think.
you my address again? All these port and Madeira casks.
Well, you know what I was going to do? I had I have this box
Uh-huh.
of barrel samples that are now well, so I didn't know technically these barrel samples don't exist anymore because the barrels have turned a whole nother 9 to 12 months.
Yeah,
And so I was asking, we just got a meeting today about our new single barrels that we're getting samples of, and I'm like, what do I do with the old ones? They're like, whatever you want. I'm
you
like,
drink
God
them.
damn it,
Yeah,
it would have been perfect for the night. Oh,
yeah.
so
Send them this
that,
way. We're having our Friendsgiving in a month and a half, so
oh
I'll
yeah.
sneak some of those onto the table as a special treat.
Sure, I can definitely. We have some rum barrels. I don't have a sample of it anymore because I thought two retailers were going to split this barrel that was 5 years in a mezcal cask.
Woo!
Yeah, so 2 years in. I don't even think I said. most of everything we've tried so far is an American oak. So
Yeah.
that first run off of stills was mostly ex-bourbon casks that we're using for the foundation of our barrel aging. So that with the mezcal barrels, there was 2 years in the American oak, and then another 5 years in the ex-mezcal barrel, which were it's a super delicious whiskey that yeah, it was actually Gold Eagle was looking at splitting it with another account, and the other account was like, it's a little too much for me because I think they run about 125 stressed at retail, so per
Yeah.
bottle. Yeah.
Man, that the smoke together could either be really amazing or could fight, you know?
Yeah, it was what I kind of found it was that the smokes were fighting each other like in the
Mhm.
middle of the drink, but then it tends to find a balance, and like what most Torabhaig does, it's really beautiful how that the smoke, the peat can be, in battle with another flavor profile, but never overwhelms it, another flavor profile. It just finds its right way of just integrating together and finding this balance. If it's a rum cask, we have one of the distillers. The neat thing about our distillers is that they get for twice a year they shut down the distillery, and the distillers get to choose whatever they want to make. We call it our Journeyman series, and those are starting to be released at the end of next year, 2026. And one of the guys made a 144 ppm whiskey.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, I gotta try that. Is there a barrel of that? There was like 4 barrels in our dunnage. Like I have to try this thing to see. I've been hearing about it. I can't remember what Woody initially put it into, and then they put it into some ex white wine barrels, and it really balanced it out because it kind of had a white wine flavor to it. I guess by itself, and it's actually like it's peaty for sure, but it's so delicious. Like there's just like this white chocolate kind of note going on with it. All this crazy stuff. So I can't wait for his own release to come out. But that's kind of show it's part of the ethos is that the people who are at that distillery make up the distillery and definitely have helped define the Torveg flavor. They're definitely defining what it comes to be our home style whiskey eventually, as a brand when it comes out to be that 10-year age statement. So a couple years into the distillery, Neil and Bruce are like, well, it seems like you guys kind of know what you're talking about and how you're doing this when, 3, 4 years ago, you guys didn't even know how to turn on a still. And they had some ideas in their heads, and then they got to put all those ideas in their heads actually into a mash tank and some fermenters and stills and see what came out with it. So I think they will have, I can't remember how old the first ones are going to be, but they're going to do it in traditional standards of like doing then to a 10-year to a 15-year and a 21-year-old release. So one of our distillers, she started at the distillery when she was 20, 21 years old. And so her 25-year-old whiskey, when they release it, she'll only be 46 years old. So it's pretty cool. Like, a lot of people, a lot of distillers at a distillery, they don't get to see their last run ever come to fruition into a bottle. So she'll only be like middle aged when it comes out. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. There's a lot of people that are very jealous of her, rightfully so, or envious maybe is the right word.
We
Oh,
never
to be
did
21 again.
I know. I was like, when I was 21, I was really, really good at drinking Jameson.
Wow, you're fancy at 21.
I know. We were known as like the fancy guys. We had bottles of Coors Light and Jameson and Jack Daniels. It's like, wow, geez, those guys, really high class. Any more thoughts on the actual whiskey though?
Find it really interesting how unpeated they feel.
Mm,
They,
I love that.
it's definitely they both have peat in them. Um, the Alt Glen was one of my favorites the last time we did a tasting, and I haven't changed my opinions at all. I still am absolutely in love with it. But the cast strength is nice because it just kind of turns the dial to 11 for all the things that were good about the Alt Glen. And even I'm not normally a huge cast strength fan because if it's too high a proof, it's hard for me to taste anything but the alcohol.
Yeah.
And I can still taste the fruity notes, the golden delicious and the that little bit of barbecue sauce at the end and
Mm,
all those other flavors. It's just fascinating the difference between a reduced one and a cast strength. They're so similar and yet they're nothing alike.
Yeah, it's just like, two single barrels that were the exact same batch of whiskey that sat next to each other in the warehouse and they taste incredibly different. It comes in just like that. And then I love what you said. It's like it doesn't taste like peat. And that was the entire goal of the distillery from day one. Is like, how do we make sure we temper this peat and get it to specifications that we want versus what the average consumer who knows whiskey, who knows peated whiskey, expects when they see peat on the label. There's an elegance to this distillery. I think it's unrivaled in a way when it comes to making peated whiskey. It's definitely a tough sell out here in the States. I've taken a very circuitous route to sell whiskeys from all over the world versus just selling bourbon and rye. It seems like a much easier idea. But I think the challenge is what's awesome, and also doing things like this where you get to educate and talk about the whiskey and just have conversations about what do you think? Like, why do you like it? Do you don't like it? Why do you like it? And then like I can kind of fill in the blanks here and there and tell you about what's going on inside your glass and how they've tried to do that for the last decade or so at the distillery. So everything you said there is like basically the brand ethos when it comes to making whiskey with a lot of peat. I like the hand movements happening up there, Jay. Must be a good conversation. Love it.
That's always the fun part. There's always somebody doing something wild on our screens.
I think he's translating everything you said into Scotland.
Into Scotland. Oh, fantastic. Oh, it's awesome. Oh man. Oh, so where are we at? So
So
I'll go
you
on
guys are,
last.
if I remember correctly, right? You're taking out the creosoles, right? When we're not getting any band-aids, any of those like tar. All we're getting is that barbecue smoke on this, and
Yeah,
it's
so
chemical
that's
excision,
a,
right? Something like that.
so we're not taking them out completely. They're definitely still present. But how we are measuring it is that so cresols and phenols give you much more of those traditional smokier medicinal Band-Aid, iodine, all the flavors we think of with peated whiskey, where glycols are giving you more of your floral notes, your sweeter notes. Sure, they still persist of like a little bit of a bonfire imagination to it, if you will, but it's more that part of that element of the actual peat is going to bring you some sweetness to it at the end of the day. So what we have discovered through testing is before going into the still and after going to the still through all the copper contact and taking away those sulfur notes and dragging out the weight of the grain, the weight of the peat. Essentially, what we're finding is that the crestals and the phenols are going down, while the glycols are moving up. Where with more traditional peated scotches, the glycols are low, stay low, crestals and phenols keep going up. And what we think is the most important part of that is all the copper contact. But also with our mash tanks, in the fermenters, how long we're running them, around 80 hours, a little bit. We think through that, through the certain cuts we're making early cuts, but long cuts at the same time, that we're finding that purest part of the whiskey after it goes through the stills too. Yeah, so the crestals and the phenols are still definitely present. It's more about the glycols going up, where in most of those three elements that make up peated scotch, or peat inside of your scotch, that's where we're finding the most difference there between other distilleries. I have a slide of it, but for some reason I can't access that slide number 27 on my slideshow. I'm not sure why. There's a warning label on it, which I've never seen before. But yeah, a little chart of how everything kind of operates from beginning of in the grain to in the stills and after the stills. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see. And when you can actually have a distillery measure that versus just saying like, hey, this is what we're doing, we're shooting for it, and it kind of tastes like it. Maybe it's the difference between American distilleries or Americans where we kind of shoot from the hip, and other people in other parts of the world are a little more educational, I guess, about what they do, and precise, and they're actual technicians of making whiskey sometimes. But yeah, it's an interesting ride of a roller coaster when it comes to what's going on before anything actually happens. And it's interesting. Probably the one thing I've never really thought too much about is ppms. What we see mostly in bottles or we hear about in reading articles and things is ppms in the grain before it goes in the still. So you hear like, oh, 45, 50, 55 is a high peated whiskey. Well, no one's taking into account like what's inside your glass at the end of the day. So for us, that's kind of the most important measurement, which will lead us into Croc which is actually of the whiskeys we were trying from Torabhaig, other than the batch strength, is the highest amount of ppms in your glass, which is about 19.7, starting at 78 and then drowning down to 19.7 after distillation. But as I mentioned earlier, we had about 2,500 barrels after running our stills for a couple months and figuring out how we were going to use them, how the techniques were going to go into creating the house style of Torabhaig. And we released two chapters in a batch strength before Croc and kind of the obvious question that a lot of Scotch drinkers will ask a distillery over in Scotland is, well, so when are you gonna start using sherry casks? Because it's so prevalent inside of like a lot of Speyside and Highland whiskeys over that part of the area of the world. And they had the idea for sure. It's like we have American oak as our standard experiment cast for the majority part, being the barrels that we use to age our whiskey inside of. But Bruce and Neil, with their access to barrels from all over the world, definitely had some sherry cast in mind. So they ran the stills, ran these batches the same way they had done after finding out their methods, aging them for about 5 years, the barrels itself, having whiskey entirely aging inside of the American oak, and having whiskey aged entirely inside of these sherry casks, both Olorosa and PX. And when they initially started blending the whiskey together, they thought, all right, well, let's make a sherry, not sherry bomb, but like have the sherry prevalently announced inside of this whiskey. So they took about 70%, 75% ex-bourbon casks, 25% sherry casks, blended together. Guess what happened? Not a good taste came out of it. Sherry was completely overwhelming. The peat, there was no balance there when it came to using that amount of sherry cask inside of the blend. So they reduced it down to 20%. 20% still. It was the sherry was standing out, and it wasn't making what they found to be the Torveg way at that point. Go down to 15, go down to 12, go down to 10, still too high. So they finally settled at 8% of sherry cask being in the final blend of this whiskey for chapter three, being 6% Olorosa cask and 2% PX cask, combined with the rest of it being American oak aged for about 4 to 5 years, on average in these whiskeys. So why they did that is because they didn't want sherry to be standing out versus the peat. And when you have distilleries that have been using sherry butts to age their whiskey inside of it for 10, 12, 15, 20 years and longer at traditional Speyside distilleries that are not cranking out or not working their stills as hard as we are, not having so much sulfur or copper contact inside of the stills with the actual liquid, you can have a lighter whiskey that can age longer and absorb flavor over many years. Our whiskey's a little more rough, a little more thick, a little more dense, if you will, just like the terrain itself on Skye. So when we're putting it inside of a sherry cask, that sherry obviously exhibits a lot of its own flavor profiles. We don't want the sherry to overwhelm it, we want the sherry to complement it. So at the end of the day, they figured out that 8% was just the right amount to add a new dimension to Torabhaig and kind of honoring the tradition between Scotland and sherry casks, but finding their own way of doing it, their own method, which the distillery has to do to stand out. You have to figure out, you can't just, rest in your laurels, or you can't rely on what's happened in the past at other distilleries. You have to find innovation and method based on what fits your style of making whiskey. So this is what they did essentially here on this one. So 46%, as we have with all of our legacy or chapter whiskeys, legacy series whiskeys, and 92% aged in ex-bourbon casks, and about 6 or 8% aged in sherry casks. So please, let's have a drink. It's one of my favorites.
I love the amount of transparency you guys provide with all the
Yeah.
data points available on the website and so on and so forth. And you have it for chapters 1 through 3, but I realized that A Sound of Sleet, it lacks some of those things. Is that like just a website decision or?
No, it is. Great observation. Also, just on the back of the bottle too. Everything's pretty much just on the back of the bottle about what we do. On the front and the back, it's they. There's no reason to hide. I think what they do, like, I think it's very comparable to what Bardstown's doing with their labeling.
Mhm.
They tell you everything about what you're drinking inside of there, and I mean, for me, it's the most obvious thing. Why not? I was being a kid who grew up in Iowa and seeing the whole Templeton rye debacle, a decade ago or so. You're like, yeah, why would you lie about what's going on inside of your bottle? Like, okay, it's
Especially if
sold.
you're the ones making it. Like nobody's gonna replicate it. Just you can tell them everything you did. It's never gonna be the same for anyone else that makes it.
It's a great point. Yeah. So getting a little ahead of ourselves with that question initially about Silent Slate, it's because um the first three chapters were all based on that original 2,500 run of barrels.
Hmm,
Sound of Slate is divergent from that for the first time.
gotcha.
Yeah. So it's kind of figuring, it's not necessarily, it's not trying to hide or be different or less transparent. It's more about, is this who we are now? Is this the angle, the direction that we are going in when we get to our house style of 10-year-old whiskey? But Croque which means the Hill of Peat, which makes sense for what we are. It's Croc. I know it looks like Canuck if you look on the website, but in Scottish Gaelic, it is pronounced Croc na Moina. And yeah, it's something I'm going to honor the tradition of obviously the peat that's going inside of the whiskey.
And you said what are the percentages of the makeup again?
It was 78 in the grain, 19.7 in the glass of ppms.
Oh no, no, I'm saying the
Oh, the
cask.
breakdown of barrels.
Yeah.
Yes. 8% sherry, ex sherry casks, and the rest of American oak.
So 8% was both Oloroso and PX?
Yes. It is 6% Olorosa, 2% PX.
Wow, that's just literally accents. Amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of interesting when we talk about the four square barrel. It, it has similar, I, you know, oak barrels are an alive part of the thing of this world, and a lot of these barrels, when they get transported around the world, they can lose some flavor profile, or they can have a lot left in there. And I think what it turned out with these sherry casks, they were exhibiting a lot of different flavor to it. When you try our sherry single barrels, you're like, "Yep, that's a PX for sure," like in there. But it's also something that, like I think we'd all agree, a single barrel should be an example of what a distillery is, but it should also highlight something different and special about it. Should it have that core built into the bottle? Absolutely. There's no point of doing it. But do we also want something a little bit weird and, and quirky? Yeah, 100%.
Makes
So
sense.
for that one, like this, like the PX barrel I was drinking last night, it was just like super grapefruit juice kind of thing to it, but the spice level with also like yellow raisins kind of in the inside of it, where the PX stands out. Like you can understand, like I think you can definitely see the Torabhaig DNA in it, but you're also not like it's not going to be like with these chapters where you find like a consistency is so easily in the whiskey from chapter to chapter.
Makes sense.
Yep.
When I envision 2% of the blend being, I'm envisioning like a part of a barrel, but then while you were talking, I realized it could have been 100 bourbon
Yeah.
and then two
Yeah.
barrels of PX sherry, right? So like there's not like a half a barrel of PX somewhere.
No, 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 no. It's you're talking about like hundreds of barrels for sure.
Got it. Got it.
I
That makes
think
more
this
sense.
one, I can't remember how many bottles we had of it, but I know we had like around 20,000 bottles of one of the releases. So put it in that context.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the cool thing about these chapters series too is that they're not allocated, they're like not that naughty word in the whiskey industry, but they definitely are finite. They're gonna once they're gone, you're not gonna find them. They are something that are building blocks towards our 10-year-old age statement whiskey, but and they're fantastic and wonderful to taste. So I'd always say to people, I'm like, yeah, buy one to drink, buy one to hold on to.
I remember after we did our tasting, the 2017 sat on the shelf for at Total Wine for like 45 bucks for a year. And my
Yeah.
friend had fallen in love with it. He goes, every time you go to Total Wine, if you see it, pick me up a bottle. I keep going through them like water. It's great. Okay. And then now we're doing this tasting and we can't find a 2017 for the life of us. I was like,
Yeah.
it's
Uh,
crazy.
and like they're selling for like $175 a bottle.
Wow. Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
those things. When it was there, nobody wanted it. Once it's gone, everybody's going crazy. It is a really good bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I wish I would have not drank mine so fast either and know a little more about the distillery, maybe done a tasting with them. But I don't even think they had a single person in the U.S. Maybe one person. I think they had a brand ambassador in New York or something like that. But
No, I think, well, when we fell in love with it, Bruce was the only guy doing all of it. So there was
okay,
no US rep for them,
gotcha. Yeah, I think I'm the first technical rep, if you
like
will.
brand ambassador. Yeah, they had sales guys for Mossburn for
Yes,
for the
we have a whole sales team for Marussia, our
yeah.
parent company. Senna, who I work for, I'm a brand ambassador just for Torabhaig and Hatazaki, or Japanese whiskeys.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So if you guys want to try some 15-year-old whiskey from, well,
If you insist.
I mean, when I say it's from Japan, it aged a little bit in Japan.
At least you're transparent about it, right? It's all about transparency.
Well, it was interesting because I don't know if the distillery likes me being super transparent about it. I don't go too much off script of what's out there in the public, but I also told the company, I'm like, hey, like, if you want me to work for you, I'm going to tell people what's in this bottle and where it came from. There's no reason to hide it. And we actually do say sourced from Scotland on the back of the bottle. So Hatazaki and Torabhaig are sister distilleries, or I should say Mossburn, essentially. So Neil and Bruce are go way back of importing Kimio, who's the owner of Hatazaki. He is also a fourth generation brewer of sake, and they've been importing his sake since like 2012, I want to say 2010. All across the world, and then he wanted to get more into distilling. So, like a typical Japanese man who wants to make whiskey, traveled over to Scotland, learned the techniques, brought some whiskey back, helped him build a distillery, and here you are today selling 15-year-old Japanese whiskey.
Cool.
Yeah, that's been a distillery for less than 10 years. Huh. The math. The math. Yeah. But it's very tasty. And they are using a lot of locally sourced oak and then aging mostly in Japan too. So it definitely brings a new dimension to it.
All right, what are we on? We're on
Croque
Croc
the Moina.
Morton.
Jane, I had a question. What do you mean by gateway whiskey with Croque the Moina?
It's something I think that you could use to get people into the peated realm
Mm,
because it's so delicious. It does have the smoky notes, but that's not its main feature. It's just so good. I keep making a list of the peated stuff that I want to get my sister to try because
mm.
her first experience was not good with peated whiskey. And she kept spitting stuff out and going, "Oh my God, Band-Aids." And I'm like, "No, no, no. This is not everything. Let me get you something else." So making a list of stuff to take home and try her on and make sure that she can appreciate a good peated whiskey.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. No, it's such a great way of expressing what this I think truly is because you taste that sherry note kind of like just being on top of everything, almost like a layer cake, if you will. Like that fruit just kind of keeps collapsing down into it.
I think when you said elegant earlier, that really does describe pretty much everything you guys do.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's one of definitely the key words. And when I first met Bruce, I think that was something I said to him. He was like, "Yep, you're right on. Like that's all I have to say." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool, great. Like this is fantastic. I'm glad that it's easy for the consumer to pick up of what you're doing and such a complex way of making whiskey." The Alglon is a lifesaver and Knock is a cream saver. I like that. I think it's a compliment. Am I right, Jason?
No, absolutely. It's like it's kind of like so you like if you think about a lifesaver and you take a lifesaver and you have that flavor that comes from a lifesaver.
Yeah.
and it's a good flavor, and you love that flavor, and you take the same flavor, but you make it a cream saver, and it's got that cream, that extra creaminess to it, and that sweetness and that smoothness to it. It takes, it's not as edgy. It takes like a little bit of the edge off of it, and I think that's what the PX Neo also do to it's like the Altwayne, but with a little bit less of an edge to it. It's more round. It's rounded on around. It's rounded instead of having a little bit of the bite to it.
Mm, love that. It's great.
So it's they're the same thing, but with just a different twin, just a different twist to them, and they're it's really nice.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great. I assume there's some sherry fans in here of, well, whiskey sherry combo. Awesome. Yeah, and it was interesting because the distillery, when they were kind of in, you know, a few years of releasing whiskeys, people kept asking him, when the sherry is going to come locally over in Scotland. They're like, yeah, we have that planned, and obviously it didn't turn out. It wasn't the amount of sherry they thought they're going to use when it came to the barrels, but I think they found the right balance there. I'll send you guys a sherry barrel sample so you can see the difference between Croc de Moina and the overwhelming parts of the sherry being exhibited inside of a single barrel itself. And I think those are like a little over 7 years old, which we're gonna get into, which is a perfect little segue into Sound of Slate, which is our newest release. And if you've looked at the website, you'll notice that it's a little bit, the labels are a little bit different than the original three chapters that we have of our whiskey. It was something that we wanted to kind of separate ourselves from, as I was mentioning to Vadim, is that it's the first time it's not based on the foundation of Torabhaig when it comes to distillation and barrel aging. We're not using just the all American oak, mostly ex-bourbon casks when it comes to aging whiskey or some refill barrels from Osborne. And not being all American oak, what we're doing this time is it's basically the same distillation style, but taking in different parts of the way we're barrel aging the whiskey and adding the biggest element. Well, I think two elements that are pretty big. One being that we're using fresh American oak that's just heavily toasted, not charred, and then that's about 22 to 25% of the makeup of the barrels that we're using for this guy. And then about 5% of it is refill barrels that we're using of refill Torveg barrels. So the first time we're using our casks and putting it into a release, and then the rest of it being basically all ex bourbon casks, of being about 75% of the makeup of the barrels that we use to age this whiskey. I've been getting some interesting feedback on it, but before we get into what it tastes like and what people are thinking about it, we've partnered up with a local artist to actually paint an abstract picture of the Sound of Slate, of the distillery itself. Let me find it here, share it with you guys. That we wanted to kind of capture the essence of Sound Asleep, of the place itself. Also by making somebody who's a local artist, um, kind of paint their own picture of it, if you will, literally, and then turn that picture into a bottle. So, as you can see in this box right here, that actually is a painting that was painted as something as more of like a marketing release, and then we captured that into the box, but also onto the label up front. So you can kind of see the hill down at the bottom where the darker colors are shaded in there, and then in the background with that green, seafoam green and blue, kind of encapsulating what it looks like on most days as the fog rolls over. And it is the that part of the island is kind of known as the foggy area. I'm forgetting the exact terminology they use for it, but it's definitely a place where fog is drifting over the mountains and drifting over the bay or the Sound of Slate, if you will. That's the actual body of water just behind us of the distillery. So bringing in the actual parts that are um, tangible in the world, and then the abstract version of it as well. So Sound of Slate, about a 7-year-old single malt, and then as you can kind of see here, started off 78 ppms in the grain, and at the end of the day, gained 14 and a half. So dropping about 5 points lower than the Croc de Moina. And 46%, just like as we have with all of our whiskeys traditionally. So yeah, but interested to see what you guys think of it. I personally love it. I don't want to influence you at all of the tasting. And I think the average consumer in Scotland's just super happy with it. I was drinking it in a bar over on the Isle of Skye and started talking to these two random guys as a brand ambassador will. You just kind of engage with anybody in a bar when you're somebody like me who's in bars all the time, just hanging out. So strangers will be friends quickly. And they're like, oh, what do you got in there? I'm like that Talisker? They smell the peat and they're like, no, it's a little distillery down south. Like, Torabhaig, of course. And they're like, is that the new one? I'm like, you guys know what that is already? So it's kind of see that cool to see that the local people actually have a little bit of pride in what's going on at our little distillery down on the south end of the Isle of Skye when I was way up in the north end. But would love to hear your thoughts on the Sound of Slate once you have nosed it and tried a little bit of it.
Everybody laughs because every once in a while I will find one. I'm like, the nose is so incredible. I'm like, I would totally wear this as a perfume.
Yeah,
This
I
is one
was.
of them. I mean, like that beeswax mouthfeel, the honey
Mm,
notes. Um, this is just luscious.
I love that. So I was actually at the count today, sampling out. It's a classic Italian steakhouse in Chicago, and bartender's just a fun guy always to hang out with, and he had not tried this. So poured a little sample of it as after we tasted some Japanese whiskey, and he's like, "Dang," he's like, "Our chef's gonna love this." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." Which is funny because she's like a German lady that cooks really great Italian food, and barely speaks English. So he's like, takes a little glass back out to the kitchen. She pops her head back like 5 minutes later and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I could just wear this." And literally, I thought as a perfume too. And then made us some delicious lunch to pair with the whiskey itself. So, right on par there. The feeling is mutual all across the country when it comes to Sound Asleep.
Where do we find it? It's not available at any of our local stores.
It is in market. We
They're hoarding all of it in Chicago. I can see that.
no, Southern's just been a real gem to work with in California.
Ah,
Yeah, from my understanding.
please
Um,
file your claims in the back of the line. You are in a long line, sir. Good luck.
uh, I know, and the thing that sucks the most is that my old boss at Star Wars runs the north part of the state for Southern now. I'm like, help us out. I mean, he has no
Of
control over it, obviously, but
course.
yeah. So has he wanted me to move to San Francisco to be one of his Diageo reps? I'm like, whoa, Tommy, slow down. Help me out first with this game. I'm like, no, I'm not moving to Northern California. Convince my wife of that. But yeah, it is slowly being put out into the market through our distributors. It's only been in the US for less than 4 weeks, and then the batch strength just arrived at our importer's warehouse. Should that be available? Probably like in 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how slow it gets checked in and distributed out to the rest of the country.
So what you're saying is it's quite a treat for us to get to try this. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think everything's a treat, right? It's not nothing crazy. We definitely, yeah, we have it here. So our major retailer has been a little slow to react on the amount of cases they first asked for, and then what they've actually taken into their 46 stores too. So what's around $200 in California? Did I miss something? The
It's
whiskey?
yeah, it's I'm looking it up on Whiskey Finder, and it's in El Cajon for 199 and in Los
What?
Angeles for 187. Yeah.
Just
Oh,
have a friend ship it to you from Binny's in Chicago, where it's 15 to 55 bucks.
yeah,
Wow, that's a
yeah,
big difference.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know who's charging that much for it. No, like we definitely I want to stay in the affordable price points so the masses can try our whiskey, which I greatly appreciate about the brand. The only thing that goes up a little bit are the single barrels, which are super rare to find. And then the batch strengths go up about $15 a bottle from the original.
So give it a couple of weeks. You should be able to get it at retail when it hits shelves here.
Gold Eagle will also ship across the country too.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
I know
If you want to
Binny's
help the
does
small,
not.
smaller guys out.
The earlier alt greens had this kind of sharp herbiness to it, and it was nice and it was balanced, but it was just like a sharp down the center of your palate. And I
Yeah,
think the last one smoothed that out, and then this one, it's kind of turned it into more of like a black tea note, and
yeah,
it's been very where the other one was just loud. This one's a very nice, calm, elegant sipper.
smooth like a slate. What? Got that in there. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the balance on this is outstanding. With you can see as a young distillery where they started with the All Glans, and then okay, we captured something. Now let's go to the next phase. And that next phase is the sound of slate, is they're finding different methods of barrel aging. I really think it's that American oak that's just fresh for the first time they're using ever when making their whiskey that is giving this like that the astringent notes of like the tannins of the barrels instead of like making it sharp are kind of combining with the smoke to make it a little bit more like succulent, if you will. And that honey vanilla sweetness is just so pronounced in there with like all this like other fruits. I get like a little mango, some plum sometimes in there, but it's a super delicious whiskey that I think that the first time I tried this, I go, Bruce, is this where we're going in the direction of the distillery? He goes, I don't know overall, but I think so. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I never know where you're going to actually go in the future with everything because everything is unpredictable. But I think this is the idea of what the distillery has in mind when you reach for a bottle of Torabhaig in the future, maybe 20 years from now, and you get a standard Torabhaig taste. It's a great note, Trent. Is there any people that dislike this or like it less than the other ones?
So I find the Canuck, I'm not pronouncing it right, but I find that one to be a lot more rounder on the finish. That
Hmm.
Sound of Sleep, despite Sound of Sleep being a lower ABV, I'm curious why that might be.
Why it might be the finish is less?
Yeah, like I find Sound of Sleep to be like a slight more harsh on the finish.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. I kind of know what you mean on the tail end there, but I'd say probably it's mostly this sherry cask influence of Croque Moine. It's just a little bit more of a sweeter palate, and maybe that's something you enjoy a little bit more. I like find I think I know it's almost like a bitterness kind of towards the back end of Sound of Slate.
Yes.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I love like Amaros and I love herbaceous kind of bitter things to it. So for me, it just like fits right in there. Where with Croque Moina, I love a little bit of that bold flavor that comes from the sherry cask. There's juicy notes to it as well, obviously, and finding that smoke in there. But for me, it just kind of trails off. I don't forget about it, but I'm also like, I'm ready for the next drink too. Where with Sound of Slate, I kind of want to sit here and be in that flavor profile for a little minute, for a little bit longer, and I can find a sipper to it. Probably the reason why you're getting that flavor is from that fresh American oak is definitely bringing in probably that bitterness to it versus there is no fresh cast at all in the previous whiskeys. It kind of if you find it like in the back of your like running out the back sides of your tongue, it's kind of more of those tinning. It comes mostly from a fresh oak that hasn't been absorbing other alcohols for who knows how long a period of time. So that fresh oak, especially the American oak, can kind of put that a little bit of that bitter vanilla flavor into your onto your palate.
It's very interesting. I appreciate that. I'm still like trying to figure out exactly what I like, if it's like the fresh stuff versus if it's a second like round of like, oh, it's already had stuff in it before. So no,
Sure.
that's very interesting. I appreciate that.
That's a great observation too. Thoughts on Malort. It's necessary once a month. Just to put you right back into place. I was literally having the conversation, I think last night or 2 nights ago at a bar. Like, it's okay. And I'm like, I was with our distributor. Our distributor, they also distribute Malort. And he's like, you don't have to be the cool whiskey guy and say that. I'm like, no, actually, like I really like Malort in a cocktail. It's a great modifier in a cocktail. And he's like, no, 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 don't be that guy. I'm like, no, I'm just being serious, man. Like if you make a anything with like plum, mangoes, um, use tires that are drugged through the winter of Chicago and then put it into a cocktail, yeah, Malort's great with that. Heinous by itself. I don't know. If you do a shot like once every 3 months, yeah, I think it's okay. I don't mind a little
Yeah, if you lose a bet with God.
yeah, exactly. A little tailpipe, anise flavor in there. It's fantastic.
It's not as bad as everybody makes it seem it to be.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a true Malort drink. Anybody who like tells like, oh yeah, I buy Malort all the time and drink it. I'm like, no, you don't. Like
It's the
that
same
sounds
weirdos that drink Fernet just for fun.
Yeah, but Malort even knows how bad Malort is. That's the problem. Like their
yeah.
their entire their entire marketing campaign was like, "We are so bad, we're gonna make fun of ourselves."
Yeah. I
Jacob,
do
Google Malort. It's a thing. It's a joke.
I
It's
do
the
have
official liquor of Chicago, I think.
I wouldn't go that far, but I mean, I guess some would. I have an experimental bottle of Malort finished or aged in mezcal barrels for like 2 months. It's pretty tolerable. It's pretty good.
All
But and
right.
they were doing RTDs for a little bit. They might still be out. I don't see them anymore. But they tasted like slushies. They wasn't the worst thing ever. So yeah.
Back to our scheduled programming, please.
Uh, go on and on about it. Yeah. It's a whole thing indeed. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll have. I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe it is the drink of Chicago. I think beer should be that thing, but who knows? Malort and a hot dog, which I've never had a hot dog in Chicago except for at a baseball stadium. So yeah, even though I live down the street from like one of the most popular ones. All right. But back to whiskey. How about that? Yeah, so Son of Slate, definitely I think it's probably my favorite Torabhaig that I've tried. It's probably a sin to say that as a whiskey rep, but when I first tried this, I was like, oh wow, like this is something like almost like Torvald grown up in a way, like where it's kind of going to the next step, next phase of its development as a brand. I had some like controversial takes about the label. I absolutely love it. I think it's beautiful and it stands out with that color just being a little bit different than anything else. I love bringing together art and whiskey as well. So many people in our industry are, artists who just didn't make it and we're like, yeah, I'll be a bartender for a year and then I'll focus on my craft and next thing you know, it's like you're a bartender for 10 years, you're a whiskey rep for another 5 years and you're like you kind of do a little bit of photography on the side or something like that. So combining the elements of art and whiskey is I'm a big fan of, big sucker of, if you will. But I think it also just kind of shows the distillery has now chosen a different path to go in. So our next release is where we'll partner up with artists to create a painting and then transform that painting into an actual label itself.
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
was
That's gonna be
wondering.
my question is if that's the direction you guys are going. That makes sense.
Yeah. You mean old style, Trent?
Yeah, that's what he meant.
There's gonna be a lot of old styles hot dogs Malort drank in 30 minutes when the Cubs win game 4 of this series, which I might have to go buy cocktails at an account. We'll see. We shall see. Time pending. The GM just did text me. He's like, "Hey, can you come by after the game if we win?" I'm like, oh, "Dude, come on, seriously. It's 11 o'clock almost." But never rests, I guess, in this
Is the
industry.
is the
But
club
yeah,
reserve
sorry, go ahead.
is the club reserve is a distillery only?
Yes, so Club Reserve are these guys right here.
Because the
They're
Madeira is one of my favorite that I ever taste.
I have one right in my hand. And it
That's
is
how you
quite
lose a
like
hand in
that.
this group. Be careful with that.
I do have a Madeira sample, so I'm gonna make sure that's sent along.
Thank
How
you.
about that? Yeah. It is delightful. I was hoping that actually Jake at Gold Eagle, one of the owners, he just had gotten back from Portugal. Yeah, from his honeymoon, or it was like a pre-honeymoon. They got like did their honeymoon before they got married because he just got married last week. But he got back and like Bruce brings all these samples by and I'm like, you have any Madeira casts? And he's like, yeah. Well, I'm like, Jake just got back from literally being like in Madeira, so let's try to sample him out in that. And loved it. It was they liked the Mezcal barrel a little bit more, but it's also I think the Madeira casts, yeah, like are like 320 bottles. So it's a lot of cases for a small liquor store to sell. And back in my day at Star Wars, I sold them a barrel that probably had 320 bottles and it sat on their shelf for like 3 years. So didn't want to repeat that, where there's still bottles lingering around years later. So yeah, but definitely Madeira is one of my favorites. The influence with the smoke and the flavor profiles you get from their cast too. So make sure you guys get a little sample of that.
Where the hell did Golan try that? That's impressive. Probably somewhere on his travels. Ah, he's not talking.
I
Those
know. It's like
spies.
I brought too small of a suitcase when I was at the distillery. I should have brought something bigger. I'm like, oh, I can bring back 2 bottles. So with all these Torveg shirts I have to bring back for the market.
Oh, when I went to Scotland, I bought a suitcase while there.
That's the move. That is the move that probably do. When I was in Australia one time for Star Wars, we did the same thing, and I was bringing back like POS and merch and bottles, and like 25 bottles in 2 suitcases or something like that. And my suitcases weighed more than the allowed limit to even check your suitcase in and pay the extra fee. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a possible thing. So great. Gonna have to buy another suitcase down the gift shop, and now I have 3 suitcases with me traveling across the world. Expensive though. Yeah, so Sound of Slate, thumbs up, pretty good. Nice.
It's definitely growing on me.
I like that. Where was it before it was not growing on you?
So like it had like a slight cedar closet vibe, which I was like, I don't know if I like it, but now I'm starting to be like, okay, this is actually really good because I just poured some more. So
It's giving you a nice little hug now.
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was interesting. I had some coworkers out on the East Coast that called me after they got their samples of this, and I think divergent is the best word for it. It's different than the first three. Um, but still has the elegance of the smoke inside of there. That floral note when we were talking about the teas, I think it's definitely coming out of there a little bit herbaceous this way. And they're like, "Hey, is there something wrong with our samples?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, it tastes different than everything else. And I'm like, "Well, yeah, that was kind of the point with this guy. It's the point of a distillery that's on a journey of building its way up into what they want to make of their house style whiskey, the 10 years old, the 12 years old, the 15 years old." Like, well, yeah, but like Crocked Lemoyne was really good, but it tastes nothing like it. I'm like, okay, let's do like a whiskey 101 here. Barrel influence. And then that's where like you have to explain like what is sherry going to do to a flavor profile? What is American oak going to do? What is fresh American oak going to do? What are those refill barrels doing? I mean, is it kind of bringing in some of the backbone, the DNA of Torabhaig? Yeah, absolutely. But is it what were in those barrels before? With the ex-bourbon cask completely? So very interesting that point. I was just going to ask this question. I would love to see what the answer is.
So while the poll is going, I'll just say on Son of Slate, it started very soft for me,
Mm-hmm.
but just continued to, I don't want to say grow, but continued to go, continued to kind of morph into different flavors. And just something that took me on an adventure. And that's what I like in whiskey.
I love that. Mark, can you write that up for me and I can share it with everybody back at the distillery? I think it's the what I have with it too because it shocked me how good it was, but how different it was. I wasn't expecting it. It was because it's softer. It definitely has a softer side to it. And I had a buyer make that comment to me recently. He goes, I think Sound of Sight is good, but I actually don't really like it. I'm like, well, why? You're like, it's just too soft. I'm like, well, that's what the distillery is going for. Someone made the comment about how Alt Glon had this sharpness to it, which it surely does. That's just the growing pains or the growing signs of young distillery. And guess what? So is Sound of Slate. It's like the next step, next element of it, where they're honing in on the distillation processes. They're honing in on what barrels they think are going to make sense for what that new make tastes like off the still, and they're going to go from there. Like this is probably what I think our whiskey will taste. It'll be in this line more Sound of Slate than it will be All Gone when you have a 10-year age statement on that whiskey in a few couple of years.
So I just
Except
revisited the nose on the Alt Glan from Batch Strength, and I got just totally reminded me of freshly cut salami.
salami.
Yeah, it's got the little sourness and a little like smoky meat, a little bit. Very
Yeah,
salami to me.
for batch strength.
Yeah.
Huh. I love that because I actually get like a meaty, succulent note from Sound of Slate.
Mm. Yeah. I was just at the store and I bought some salami the other day, so this was just reminding me of that.
Lovely. I like that. The first uh the first thing I thought of when I had Sound of Slate was succulent. Like not it doesn't taste like duck, but it has a texture of that.
Mm.
So we've had a lot of
Like
people
cat
talk
type.
about, we've had a lot of people mention barbecue and meat and you know salami, what Vadim just said. Is that something that kind of comes up with peated whiskeys? Because I've heard it in other brands too.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a way of like I think Bowmore is probably the most notorious when it comes with that word and phrasing over on Isla is it shares those barbecue notes to it. My wife actually used to work for Beam Suntory and Bowmore. All the Isla scotches that they owned were kind of her babies when it came to marketing, and they would do all of these like barbecue and seafood pairings with it because it was, obviously seafood makes sense so much to it, but it was also those notes are so reminiscent of a barbecue. So I think it's definitely something that's applicable to most peated scotches for sure. I had one today from Old Pulteney that was like tastes like honey barbecue sauce. It was a single barrel, like
Wow.
and yeah, super spicy as well, but it was like it just like some vanilla notes up front, and then that vanilla transformed into honey, and just kind of got like meaty towards the back end and sweet.
Nice. Uh,
Yeah,
I know Kim said she's got to bounce, so we're going to take a quick second to raise our glasses and say cheers and thank you to everyone for being here, Jake for spending the evening with us. We're going to say, Birkin and Trent, turn on your cameras. Jesus, Jade, not enough glassware there, huh? All right. Well, Jake, thank you so much for spending the evening with us and everyone
yeah,
else for being here. Let me hit. No, Jake, hold those up and smile to the camera. There we go. Got it.
nice.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kim.
Are you ready for the results for our favorite from the Torabhaig line?
Yeah, I hope I'm predicting the way it will turn out.
What do you think? Who do you think is the winner?
I think Croc No Morno will be the winner, but I think it'll be all over the board.
Well, the results are in.
Oh, so this is very typical of most. Usually there's an all gone in there or so, but I guess not most big crowd we have. But there's so many people like, oh, Crocodile one, this is great, and they try to sound a slate like that's even better. And then there's always the batch strength people who are just like, I'm gonna hold on to that alcohol. So this is very representational of what I usually see at tastings, which I also love too, because it shows that people are kind of like They love it. They love everything about Torabhaig versus like there's one thing that stands out. I think there's one thing that stands out. It's like maybe they're doing something completely wrong from the very beginning. So I love to see that there's a little diversity in this. It's awesome.
I
It's
gotta
pretty close
say,
too.
my glass was empty to take the picture, so I poured the Mossburn, the four square version,
Hmm.
and as I was pouring it, the nose came to me from two
Okay.
feet away.
Oh yeah. Let's get into it. Um, I I love the story behind this whiskey. From an aging standpoint and finishing about it. So Bruce actually used to work for Foursquare, where the barrels came from back in the day. He's a guy who's lived some interesting lives. He lived all over the world, lived in the Caribbean. I don't even know for how long. I think he worked for Foursquare for like 9 years, and then eventually met Neil. Went over to Mossburn, and they eventually built Torabhaig, but they had these connections all over the world for barrels. So they source whiskey from all over Scotland. I would say Speyside is the main. I believe this is Speyside. I don't, like I said, I don't necessarily sell Mossburn, but when you work with the guy who's one of the owners, get to know it a little bit well. But he was, we were on a podcast together, and he was tasting. It was just coming out at the four square finish, and they thought like they get these barrels in, they get them into the warehouse, and they're like just automatically rum all over the place. The smell that's just taking over the entire place, and they're loving it. They're like, all right, this is gonna be a quick finish. We're not gonna shock the whiskey into flavor or anything like that, but like this probably shouldn't be more than a 6 month finish just to kind of get those standard stats out there. Let the barrel turn a little bit in that half year period of time, and the whiskey kind of absorb the flavor. So after 3 months, they go and visit the cask, see how it's going. It's 12-year-old whiskey, looking to do a finish on this, and they're like, there's nothing here after 3 months, like no flavor of rum whatsoever. Go back 5 months, 6 months, still no flavor. They were not planning on doing this. 8 months, no flavor whatsoever. And it wasn't until about the 11th month they started getting a little bit of molasses, a little syrupy, some of those rum characteristics and vanilla. Next thing you know, at 12 months, that thing just turned, and that is like everything they're looking for is inside of that cask when getting the absorption from the oak and pulling those flavor profiles from the staves that are still have that rum present on the inside. And they're like, we have to cut this off or we're going to overwhelm the whiskey. And next thing you know, it's about a 12-month finish on this 12-year-old whiskey. And it comes out with this guy right here, which I think is just like, it's more of an expensive whiskey, about $75, $80 retail. But the first time I ever tried this thing, I'm like, let's make some tiki cocktails. Like this is the best thing for it. It's just like you get a little bit of some smoke, you get some traditional like island flavors from it. The vanilla stands out so much. The barley still shines through. Like it's an exceptional blended whiskey that's then finished inside of four square rum barrels for about 12 months.
And this is the regular Mossburn blended Space Eight, right? The regular one that's the blue label that you can find
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
shelf.
yeah.
It's finished for another year.
Yep.
Gotcha. Because we've tried the blended malt, the Space Side blended malt, and the Isla blended malt. You guys have
Okay.
the release one and release two with
Yep.
the weird staves and the heads and whatever.
Yeah, but we did different, yeah, combinations of staves and barrel heads.
Yep. So this is that Space Side blended malt, same blend, but just finished longer.
Pretty much.
Cool. All right. And bottled at a hefty 57.7. That's impressive.
Which I like. I think it's appropriate. I think it's appropriate to have that cast strength.
Mm,
I'm trying to see if I have any in my house.
that's really good.
Yeah, it's really tasty. We did a Calvados finish as well that came out part of this finishing series that was also exceptional from it. I like it because like the rum is you obviously taste this and think, okay, there's rum influence in here somehow, but it's not overwhelming, I don't think. And I think it's just fun. It's a fun whiskey to try to like play around with and see what's going on the inside of here. I like that. It's only like Foursquare rum. Yeah, I was at another you guys know Starlight in Indiana? They had some Foursquare rum barrels that they have their own beehives, and they make honey, and they aged the honey in whiskey barrels. They took like their 5 year bourbon, finished it in or put it in the honey barrels, and then took it out and finished it in Foursquare rum barrels. And you kind of think like maybe like it's sweet on top of sweet on top of sweet, but the balance was so nice to it, and it had like this like funk to it as well. So tasty. That was my first entry into liking Foursquare. So I'm kind of there with you.
It's interesting that I get a lot of apples on this. I understand this is the rum square, but when you said Calvados finish, I was like, I taste Calvados in this. It's weird.
I'm putting it into your mind.
I
Are you
definitely
guys
like
big
that
Finnish
apple
whiskey
now.
fans?
Sorry, can you please repeat that?
Are you Finnish whiskey fans? Like having the finishes with whiskeys? Do you like that? Or do you guys want to taste something that's more just standard, put into barrels and find the bonding there at the end?
I'm relatively new to Scotch. Like it's maybe been like a year and a half. And then, I mean, I've had rum and I didn't think I liked it. However, the Mossburn is phenomenal. It
Mm,
tastes like a oatmeal, no, not oatmeal, like a raisin molasses kind of cookie. It almost feels desserty, but it isn't that sweet in comparison to like something like a sherry cask.
hmm.
So I'm open to any recommendations of things to try, but this thing is phenomenal right now. So
Nice.
I'm a big fan of well done finishes. So like, Starlight's my jam.
I mean, everything's finished there.
We have not yet featured a Finnish brand, but I'm working on Cairo.
Okay, cool.
But yes, love Finnish whiskeys.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I think well, so the Journeyman series at Torabhaig will lend its hand to some finishing, and not really intentionally. It was more about distillers tasting their whiskey and thinking, well, if I put it into this barrel, how will it turn out? Kind of in the method of I think what Found North is doing with Canadian whiskey, where they're like, we have all this Canadian whiskey that's aging this whiskey, aging that whiskey. If we put it in this barrel, what will it do? And they're all about experimentation and driving innovation through that. I think Torveg will find some ideas through the Journeyman series about what and why, really the why of why what would be the finishing whiskey. And I think it's all for flavor. Flavor profile to be driven. So if there's something else you can pull out of that whiskey by putting it into different barrels, like let's go ahead and try that. So I assume we'll be doing like some special releases in the future, just knowing how Bruce and Neil operate as blenders, as whiskey makers, as people who have an idea in their head and want to see it come into reality. So I'll be interested to see what happens though with Torvig and finishes, if there ever will be one, versus just full maturation inside of barrels.
Mary and I found that getting a finished whiskey and then getting some of the spirit that the finishing barrel came from is an interesting experiment to
Mm,
try what was in the barrel initially and then see if you can find those notes in the whiskey that was then finished or aged in the same barrel.
yeah, I love that. Is this everyone's first Mossburn?
yes,
A couple people have tried it. Yeah, it's a fun company. I'll put it that way. They have thousands upon thousands of barrels of inventory to try. We're actually moving facilities right now too, which is making it a little bit difficult on some things. But yeah, they I think experimental is the name of the game with them. And like Neil and Bruce have been working in the spirits industry each for almost 4 decades. Not to show their age, but yeah, they have many connections all over the world. So the barrels that they can acquire and then decide what to do with those barrels. Want to keep them fresh, want to shave, toast, rechar them. Let's go that route too. So a lot of different ways to play around, which kind of gets into our last drink, which is the Cashtel Camish. Um, this is named after the castle that is actually on our grounds at Torabhaig. If I can reshare my screen with you in a second. Uh, it is a beautiful little short hike from our distillery grounds to back through a little wooded area past a torn down barn that was blown down, I was told, and also through a creek, and you will find your way to the castle ruins. Of course, my screen sharing is not working now, but let's try it again. All right, it's this guy right here. So this was actually a castle that was fought over between two cloud clans um, in Ireland, Clan MacLeod being one of them, which is also Neil's name, which is his family fought over this for about, I believe it was told 200 years. There was a battle between the two clans, and eventually the King of England stepped in and said, it's time for you guys to leave this area. And what was left is this, which is Cashel Camish, which is on the grounds of Torabhaig. Neil thought it'd be appropriate to name a whiskey off of it. So this is what we have here today inside of our glass. Did I send you to 12 year? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Awesome.
12.
Awesome. I've actually never had it. So
Wow.
yeah, I've had a couple of other Cashel Camish expressions, but this
There's only
one I
two,
have,
right? There's only the
yeah.
12 and the non-age stated.
There's that available here, I should say.
Okay.
Yeah, I had one. I can't remember we have a bunkhouse at our distillery, and then one room is just full of bottles, and there was a single barrel that was like 15 years old, I think I want to say.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was kind of my go-to end of the night dram each night after hanging out all day. So very tasty in that sense. But yeah, it's I think it's cool with like these blended whiskeys. They're taking it only from parts of Scotland that make peated whiskey. So maybe there's a distillery in Orkney. It's not hard to figure out. Only got two. Some distilleries in Islay that we're taking from, and then a distillery on the Isle of Skye. So I can only imagine what that might be when it comes to making using peated whiskeys to make a blend inside of this guy. So, but love to hear your thoughts on this one. I think I think back to the word we've been using all night, balance is key for these blends.
It feels very smooth, but has like a slight like cantaloupe kind of vibe to it.
Nice. Melon is definitely like something like I pick up on a lot of the like Mossberg. I mean, it's the same company essentially, but blending inside of there for sure. I'm also like one of those guys, like once I get fixated on a certain flavor, like my family made homemade anise candy. So whenever I have like a slight hint of anise inside of anything, I'm like, well, there it is. It's all over this drink. People like, I mean, it's kind of present, but not like that much. So melon's the same thing too. It being like one of my favorite fruits that whenever I find it inside of a drink, I love it.
No, it's definitely like just perfect. I think this might be my favorite one. If it wasn't about the peat, I would say this is my favorite one.
Wow. Lovely. I'll have to go buy a bottle myself.
I mean, this is definitely peaty, but not crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I knew a little bit more about how they're taking the balance of each area of peated distilleries in Scotland and blending it inside of there. Something that the brand's not super heavily focused on, Mossburn in general, but especially in the States, I should say.
I remember the reason I liked the non-age stated version was because Bruce was saying three distilleries and one of them is Torabhaig in the non-age stated one. And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
12 years three distilleries, but not Torabhaig. So figure it out which three it is.
yeah. I'm pretty sure our friends at Highland Park are one of them. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, quite sure on that one.
That's an expensive whiskey to blend. It's impressive.
That's why they hired guys from Edrington.
How much does this go for?
think it was like around 80, 85. Double check.
Like it definitely has like some slight peat, but it also has like a grassiness, some fruit, and then like a sweet towards the end.
Mm.
So I'm like, it's phenomenal, but I'm like, oh God, there goes $85.
See what we got here.
It's genuinely been a phenomenal, like every single scotch we've tried has been awesome. So thank you for this
Yeah.
lineup of
You have
scotch.
it for 39.97 in Diamond Bar.
I was just gonna say it's $55 at Gold Eagle right now.
Yeah, and Mission have it for 62.
Nice. Yeah.
But
How does the sherry influence this one?
Fang Fine Wine and Spirit Diamond Bar, $40.
There we go.
If it happens to be your friends at Highland Park and you guys and tastes like Kahlua to me. It's a nice sherry touch on all that, and this is
Dang.
really phenomenal.
Kalida's one of my favorite distilleries. Now I need to really go drink. Get excited now. I just tried a 9-year Kalila single barrel today. I have a retailer. He's very eccentric in Chicago. I don't know. Do you guys know Warehouse Liquors? Have you ever heard of it?
Mm.
Kind of popular. It's been around for like 40 years. Guys started so many different single barrel programs with distilleries, and so he's been selling scotch for longer I've been alive, and the things he gets from independent bottlers and from distilleries themselves for single barrels are quite amazing. But it was a 9-year Cleo barrel that I had today. It was just phenomenal. Like just all those chocolatey notes you want to get from there, and the baking spice and the peat. No, it's lovely.
Is it Gene? I think I hear his name come up on Single Cast Nation all the time.
Oh yeah, Gene is the guy.
Yeah,
That was actually a single cast nation Kalila single barrel.
that makes sense.
So yeah, fantastic. Great timing. There was also he had a what else did he have? The old Pulteney, and then there was one more Scotch. He made me try three different Russell picks today, side by side to see the difference. One tasted like a Scotch. I couldn't believe it was Russell's. I'm like, this has to be a single malt, and he's like, nope, Russell's bourbon pick. I'm like, oh, how interesting. But it's always an education when you go there. It's like, I'll try your whiskey. Now you're gonna try my whiskey and listen to me for 20 to 30 minutes about whiskey, which I absolutely love. So
This might be like a very off-topic question, and you might not be allowed to answer this question, but what other brands of scotch do you enjoy besides the one that you are currently employed by?
yeah, that's a great question. No, I would never work for somebody that held me back from talking about other brands, to be honest. Um, let's see. Glenfarclas might be my favorite distillery of all time. Just absolutely love Glenfarclas. It's just it was one of the bar I kind of learned how to drink scotch at. I would say that they were big Glenfarclas fans and friends with the owners. But yeah, so that was definitely good there. Kalila's great. I love Lagavulin. Um, Abelauer, I've got to know people there over the years that just absolutely adore what they do over there. So kind of just, all over Akatosh and like love
Speaking of
that.
Aberlour, make sure you sign up for next week's tasting.
Oh yeah, nice. Who's hosting that with you guys?
That one will be hosted by who remembers? Oh, Owen. He's the national brand ambassador for Pernod.
Oh, nice. I didn't know they had one. A lot of their ambassadors resigned over the years, and now they
They,
hired somebody
they,
new.
yeah, they changed ambassadors quite a bit. Owen Gallagher. He
Cool.
did Glenlivet with us a couple of months ago, and now we're doing Abelauer. He's fairly new
Nice.
to the company, but he has a background in distilling, so he really knows his stuff. He's great.
Nice. Where's he based out of?
He's I want to say either New York or Chicago, so he's out there
Huh.
on the East Coast.
Haven't crossed paths with him yet. Look forward to it.
Nice guy.
Nice. Good to hear. Yeah, I love whiskey from all over. I've worked for distilleries literally from all over the entire world. So, um, yeah, sing the praises of many for sure.
I am curious, Jake, what are your thoughts on the Glenfarclas 105? Because I got a bottle of it and I found it just slightly too hot and
Hmm.
a little bit too sherried, but not quite sweet. And also, what Glenfarclas would you recommend?
Well, if you can get this barrel pick from this little tiny store in Chicago one day, that is a common. It's technically a barrel pick. It's actually a three-barrel blend they did of like it's like 11-year-old, 11 and a half year old, and a 12-year-old whiskey. Absolutely fantastic. So if you're ever at Piccadilly Market in Chicago, do it. That'd be the one I recommend the most. But yeah, the 105, I don't I think I've only ever bought like one bottle of it. I kind of know what you mean. It's just
That's a
it's like
very
a
entry level.
sure, the great way of putting it. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like with like 12-year Glenfarclas for like 50, $55, it's just like something that should be on everybody's back bar if you like whiskey.
Yeah, no, the 12 year I thought was phenomenal compared to the 105, but the 105 I ended up spending like $110 on. So,
Nice. I have some buddies that own a bar in Scotland, and I can't remember if it was 61 or 62-year-old Glenfarclas they had a bottle of. And he brought me like the tiniest little sample over to the States, and that was pretty special too. I'll put it that way. It was I wouldn't even consider it a sip, how much was in there, but it was just enough to coat the palate.
that
So
sounds insane. I didn't even know there was scotch that old that was in a bottle and not drank.
oh,
Depends how deep is your pocket, but once you start to go to the family reserve, it's a different level.
there you go. You said it. Yeah, one of the distilleries I used to work for claims they have some very old scotch that's a few decades or more older. I don't know, but I worked for Macallan and we did a two-barrel blend of an 80 and 81-year-old barrels of whiskey that was $190,000 a bottle.
Gordon MacPhail just released an 85-year-old Glenlivet.
Saw that.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not sure how the liquid still exists in those barrels, but very
They,
fine, very small amount.
you know,
I'm curious, what is your favorite tar bag?
Hmm. I think my favorite Torabhaig is probably Sound Asleep. It just matches what I'm looking for, I think, a lot in whiskeys. Uh, it kind of was like with every series that came out, every chapter that came out, I was kind of more impressed by the next one, and kind of like Crockton Wine was the one I was like, oh yeah, I should probably work for this company. I'll put it that way. Sound Asleep, I think, is what I want to see the direction of the distillery go in. I'm really, really excited to try the back strength of the final blend of it all. I think it's going to be absolutely outstanding based on the one single barrel sample I had of the batch strength. So, definitely there. If I the Madeira single barrel I have would probably be my favorite, but that's not fair to pick from those since they're not readily available. And the Mezcal barrel is quite fantastic too. I hope there's a popular whiskey bar that I'm trying to finalize this three-barrel deal with, and I hope he chooses the Mezcal barrel. So
I've never had anything in Ezcal. I'm curious how that would taste and feel like the aspects of that.
yeah, yeah, I think the vegetal elements of Mezcal um really go nicely with the smoke and the spice of Torabhaig. So it kind of blends together well. Yeah, it is choosing your favorite child, but I don't know. I've gotten for some other more brands. I was so much more conservative when I said what my favorite whiskey was. Now I'm just kind of like, eh, this one stands out. So even like with Macallan, like I always tell people, like, just buy 15-year-old Macallan. Like, you don't need anything else. It's $175. It's expensive enough, and it's really good. You don't need to go to 18, which is probably quintessential Macallan. 25, you don't need to pay $2,600. You don't need to pay $4,000, $4,500 for 30 years. Like 15 years, just excellent. It's like Pappy 15, right? It's one of everyone's favorite, right? No.
It's
I
been a
will
minute since I looked.
try
Do you
it.
guys? Oh, sorry. It's been a minute since I looked. Do you guys have Minnesota distribution yet? Or
We do not yet.
womp womp?
I don't think we do. Let me double check. I can get back to you tomorrow. But I don't think we. You're not control state, right?
No, we're not.
No
Okay.
frontier.
I don't think we do just yet. I know we have Wisconsin, but I don't think we have Minnesota just yet. Which we should. It's a great state. If you feel like also too, it's like those are the states you're gonna be drinking should drink peated scotch. Like cooler all year round. You're up on the North Shore in July, it's still like 60 degrees at night. So yeah,
Perfect for a October thunderstorm.
there you go. That is so weird to hear an October thunderstorm. So
Well, I'm sitting on the couch watching football, and all of a sudden, flash of lightning and just a barrel of thunder rolls through. I literally jumped, not expecting it.
I guess we did have one the other night in Chicago overnight. It was strange. My 2-year-old son did not like the thunder and lightning. Hence, he came to our bed at 3:30 in the morning. Uh, any other thoughts as we close up here?
This is really good. This is really exciting. What's next? What should we be looking out for? Obviously, the cast strength Sound of Sleet is coming. Should we be looking out for? What do we do to stay in the loop? Is there a club we can sign up for? How do we support the brand? Because this is really
Yeah,
great.
I
there is a
want more
club.
of it.
Unfortunately, for to get any of the whiskey, you have to be UK address from the club. But I think it's following along with the journey through the website, social media. I don't know who Mayor Hawthorne is. Who's that? Who's this guy? I have those glasses somewhere. But I think it's following along. So Batch Strength will be out very soon. Our goal is to have those Journeyman series out in America by the end of next year. And being a little bit ahead of schedule, we are predicting of releasing our 10-year-old age statement in 2027. So we didn't think we'd get there in 10 years of distilling, but turns out that they like the progression of the distillery. So hopefully by the end of 2027, we will have our 10-year-old age statement out in the market, which is super exciting for the brand to see the evolution of what it's gone on, the journey it's gone on since 2014 when the idea of the brand was chipped away and that masonry work at the farmstead into what it is today and to where they've gone now. What 11 years, 12 years later. So yeah, I think just kind of support. It's not the most expensive whiskey in the world. I understand like asking 55 to $75 for a bottle of whiskey is a lot, but yeah, if you can afford it and want to drink some and support a cool local brand that's made by people of that island and the parts of that island, definitely is all inside of the class of Torabhaig.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Again, this is a brand we discovered right when you were releasing some of your first stuff, and we've been very. I feel very blessed to have known and been following the brand. Again, I got to visit on my birthday in 2022. Um,
Awesome.
Bruce showed me around, gave me a bottle of 2017. I was like, "Isn't this the stuff, same exact bottle we have in the US?" He goes, "Yeah." Like, can I at least get it signed by everyone? So he walked around and got all the distillers to sign it.
That's
That was
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Somebody who was met him right away. I was like, oh, this is a guy I want to kind of like keep in my life and a few months later, we started working together. So
For sure. Yeah. Last time he was in town, we did an in-person tasting with him,
oh,
and
nice.
I want to say Pasadena, was it? And he came, it was like middle of January or something, and I was doing dry January just myself. And so he poured maybe a dozen samples for us, and then he pulls out these like, hey, I just came from Scotland from the distillery. I have these barrel samples, these 100 ml samples that I brought for you guys to try. And he's like, what do you here? Have some. I'm like, thank you. I'm dry January. I'm not drinking. He goes, you haven't had anything this whole night? We've tasted like a dozen things. I was like, no, not a drop. He was shocked.
Which is like shocking for Bruce to hear because he might have like one drink in a day. As like I'm sitting at a couch like highball, old fashioned, pour. And he's like, well, Jake, you don't have to talk tonight. I'm like, that's a good point, Bruce. I'll have another drink. So yeah. No, he's an awesome dude. He's a great guy to work for, and I think this distillery is an absolute gold mine at some point. Just once the word of peated Scotch doesn't have to taste like what you think Lafroig 10 tastes like, because someone gave it to you too early on in your whiskey journey and blew your palate out. It's like, don't be afraid, come back. There's some good
Yeah,
peat out there,
for
which I
sure.
also love. I also love Lafroig too, so I should say that. But I have I have like 10 bottles over there. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a great distillery, and like you said, it's affordable, right? There's a lot of new distilleries that don't have the the scale to be able to put out a $50 bottle. It's nice to see a $50 bottle, a cask strength, $80, right? Like all day long,
Yeah.
twice on Sunday. This is something we can do, something you can afford to squirrel away a bottle for later. Whereas like it's hard to do that when the bottles are at 100 or tipple over that.
Yeah, definitely. It's and like I said, these are finite releases. There's a lot of all gone out there. The obvious thing is that happens is when you have chapter one, people are excited to buy the first thing, and so that sells out relatively fast. So the brand, overestimates the popularity of what their whiskey might actually be after one release. They made a lot. Croc the is actually going out faster than Alt is because there was less bottles made. I think there's a little bit more Sound of Slate, definitely a lot more Sound of Slate than Croc the. But yeah, if you see it and you definitely find it at a price that's pretty affordable, you think affordable for you, grab a bottle to hold on to and see if you can kind of complete the whole Legacy series once we have everything out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. We appreciate it. And yeah, we'll definitely
Yeah.
help you back on to do some Japanese flight. If they have six
Oh
expressions,
yeah.
we'll definitely do that.
Oh yeah. I think we have at least yeah. There's there's things out there. Put it that
Okay,
way. Yeah.
awesome. Let's
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
start planning for it. Right now, I'm looking at like February of 2026.
Cool.
It's kind of where we're at on our end.
Yeah. Let me see how much allocation of our 15 year we got. There was only 2,800 bottles sent to us in the US of that
Okay.
guy. Yeah, but we have four that are pretty strong mainstays in that. But yeah, we can kind of revisit what Mossburn tastes like when it's aged over in Japan.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
excited.
and inside of Mizunora and Sakura Oak too. So yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Well,
Well, yeah, it's awesome, guys.
we appreciate your time, Jake. We look forward to supporting this brand and hopefully see you on again soon. If you're in LA, you have my number, you have my address. Hit me up.
Yeah, I absolutely will. Hopefully next year we'll be able to go do some more things out in the West Coast, not just in Chicago and the East Coast as a brand. So obviously things like this help out when people are all over the country drinking it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jake.
Awesome, guy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Guys, we're
Thanks,
gonna
Jake.
survive. We're gonna survive game four. There will be a game five. It looks like for Chicago. Let's
Awesome.
do this. Let's do
Congrats.
this. Up to Wrigley I go.
Have fun.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thanks, Jake.